Welcome, this is game 2, version 0.6.2. The minion player has Odo Founder and Odo the Great Link Savior, Aractorol and the Zero Cost Jem'Hadar. The Dominion player will go first. Cadet player has a bunch of cadets. Rachel Garrett, who costs 0. One of the differences in this format is, or the latest rules, is that you can only have 7 starting bridge crews, so it doesn't really help if all of your personnel cost 0, which cuts down a bit of the advantage that the cadets have. Turn 1 for the Dominion player, just playing Hippocrates Noah, which is a really good card for getting past nothing to lose. Here on the next turn, the cadet player drawing 1, then playing Loxana Troy for 1, and then targeting her with These Are the Voyages, drawing 6, deciding who to place under. Obviously already just played Loxana, so that's a good candidate. Doesn't need a ship right now, so maybe the ship could afford to put the ship on the bottom. So that's 2 out of the 3. And putting Tolian Sorin on the bottom. Loxana Troy joins the crew and 8 people attempt on turn 1. The Dominion player has 8 dilemmas to draw. Outclassed is an obvious choice, costs 3. Just adding hard time before that to thin out the crew a little bit. So, first dilemma of the game, hard time. Cadet player needs to shuffle crew, and Erica Bentine is selected. She will go back to hand at the end of the next turn. And then just confirming that the attributes on the ship are less than what is required for outclassed, so everybody is stopped. And the cadet player passes the turn back to the Dominion player. Dominion player decides against playing These Are the Voyages at first, and then decides to go with it. We'll be targeting Odo, so it gets to draw 5. These Are the Voyages. A third copy drawn goes to the bottom, and finally chooses to send Persis to the bottom. So that was 2 out of 3 counters spent. Can't play any more personnel, which maybe is a mistake. Maybe it would have been better to have another personnel in play. At the moment, clearly doesn't feel like it's safe to attempt with only 5 people. So just passing the turn again and giving the cadet player a second turn of attempting, the head start grows. So that's Jadzia Dax, who was drawn, and Tim Waters, Cadets. The Centaur comes home to Earth and then flies back, and attempting with 9. The Dominion player draws 8 dilemmas. Obviously can't play a planet dilemma at a space mission. Chula the game, there's really no reason not to play that. Chula, pick 1 to save 2, always a good option. We'll stop 1 for Chula the game and then return 1 to hand. And hard time. That is 5 cost worth of dilemmas. The Dominion player needs to decide whether to throw a 3rd dilemma or a 4th dilemma, that is. And thereby increase the number of dilemmas underneath the mission. This can actually sometimes be good because the centaur gives an attribute bonus to personnel. Everybody has attributes +1 while there are less than 3 dilemmas under the mission, so it actually doesn't hurt to place another one under there, even if it will make subsequent attempts easier. So Chula the game went on the mission. Chula pick 1 to save 2. The crew gets shuffled, and that is Rachel Garrett selected. She has the text, when this personnel gets stopped, another personnel must be returned to hand. Not too terrible, as a 1-cost personnel who went back to hand. Now processing Chula pick 1 to save 2's text, randomly selecting 3 people. The cadet player here has to choose whether to return 1 to hand. Given that there's 2 more dilemmas under there, maybe it would have been worthwhile to let them all be stopped. But opts to continue. So Chula unfortunate roll, another Chula dilemma requires a stop before processing the texts. And now randomly select 3 personnel if their total cost is, their total integrity is odd, but I think the integrity there was even, so nothing happened. Hard time. Takes out 1 more, takes out Cisco. With 4 people unstopped, that crew is not going to solve. So the Dominion player maintains parity, even if it is at the expense of 3 dilemmas under. But on this turn, we'll probably have enough personnel in play to make an attempt at Teflon Prime without worrying about being destaffed. These are the voyages. And having the expensive personnel in play early on as a target is really very strong in bridge crew format, where you only have 3 counters to draw or spend with on any given turn. So I would expect that to show up a lot. And the question is, which of these cards is the Dominion player willing to part with? There's some good cards in hand. Ikarika, really good for boosting attributes. Dar, being a hologram, is good for passing. Nothing to lose. That said, he still only has 4 staffing icons here. So we'll have to be careful who he sends down. Okay, it looks like opting to send the personnel who don't have staffing icons and protect some of those who do. It's just 4 personnel. 4 personnel is all that is needed to solve this mission. Although this crew will not be able to solve with the 7 strength of Dar and 6 strength of Hippocrates Noah. I think that places 8 and 8 is 16 and 7 or 6, 13. Well, maybe they can solve. 16, 13. No, that would be 29. So no, they definitely can't solve. The cadet player, recognizing that he only needs to stop 1 personnel, has played Skeleton Crew first up. That will stop the small attempts from the Dominion player. So that's probably quite a strong move. And then Chula pick 1 to save 2, either stop 3 or return 1 to hand. Well, there's no point in returning 1 to hand here. And the Dominion player passes back to Cadet player, who returns Benjamin Cisco to hand. Hard time leaves the game. And just confirming who is in the crew. There's no one that could pass and nothing to lose. So opting to spend all of his counters on Hippocrates Noah. Flying home to fetch him. And flying back. 7 personnel there now. 4 to draw and spend because of the 3 under. The Dominion player clears up his dilemma hand and will draw 4. So in his hand he does have uninvited. That There must have needed to be some decision making. Do I burn that early, or do I trust that with only 4 dilemmas to draw, I will definitely draw something that will stop the attempt? But in this case, Chula the Chandra is the draw. With Chula the game on the mission, that is very strong. And once again, as a Chula stop, Rachel Garrett has been selected, so she returns someone else to hand. This attempt is almost certainly going to fail. We'll have 2 personnel stopped here. 2, 3. In fact, everybody will be stopped by Chula the game. In actual fact, Jazia Dax shouldn't be stopped there, but she wouldn't be able to solve on her own, so that won't matter. Dominion player lives again, 4 dilemmas under, and now attempting again. Ikarika seems like a good choice. Spends all his counters on Ikarika, flies home. Coming back. Now everybody will team up most likely. Well, he could choose to leave 1 personnel behind because Skeleton Crew only requires him to have 6 personnel. But it looks like everybody got beamed down, so 7 personnel, 1 under, 6 to draw. Greater needs can probably be passed with that crew, so we need a strong filter in front of it. Skeleton Crew won't help playing a second Skeleton Crew. So Chula the dice here seems probably quite strong, although I wonder, yeah, the cadet player here may have forgotten about Ikarika, whose attributes can be boosted. There's lots of high strength personnel. There may well be a high integrity personnel. I'm not sure about cunning. Hard time. Randomly selects Hippocrates Noah. That's not a bad result, because Hippocrates Noah has cunning 7. Now, with that cunning 7 personnel, is there another personnel who can pass this dilemma? And there it is. So Ikarika has integrity 8, Odo can provide cunning 7, and almost anyone else can provide, in fact every single other personnel can provide strength greater than 6. So that is good, that wall will be passed, and with Odo having exobiology and plenty of officer and security in this team, that mission will be solved. Oh, okay, I see what's happened here. So the Chula the game stop was processed, and that was Odo, randomly selected. The wall doesn't matter. Odo gave the opponent 5 points using his ability to prevent the stop, which means everybody's still in the team and the mission is solved. But that is all the range for the turn, so the cadet player passes back, and just confirming the points there. 30 points, 1 mission ahead to the Dominion player. The cadet player is playing catch up here, but there are more dilemmas, a fair number under that mission already, and the second mission for the cadet player is probably easier than the second mission for the Dominion player. Four dilemmas drawn, 8 in the crew. Cannot play in development, even though that's very strong. The only useful option here is Gom2, but it is very likely that the cadet player has the diplomacy. Certainly one of the cadets and Benjamin Sisko. Rachel Garrett has diplomacy, Sisko has diplomacy. and just counting up the attributes, but with 8 people there, even though Hippocrates Noah is very low integrity, it's very unlikely, and in fact that is the mission solved. So now 45 points to 30 ahead, 1 mission each. The cadet player is in front. The cadet player will be able to fly straight on to avert danger this turn, and attempt again with, I didn't spot that if it was 7 or 8. Looks like it was 8. Can't play space dilemmas. Going to lead with the tool of the game. The Dalrock never hurts, although Loxana Troy is still there. She is 6 cost. We will see in a moment how that works out. And not a lot of options for actually stopping personnel here. This should only take out 2 personnel. Will it be the right 2 personnel? The cadet player will certainly have the attributes left with 6 personnel to pass avert danger. And it seems likely that they will have astrometrics, physics, and science. 5, putting the others under. Okay, Dreamer goes on the mission. The Dalrock. And counting the cost, 6, and I have lost count here. Let's see, 1, 2, 6, and 7, and 8, and 10, and 13. 0 is 13, 14, 15, 16. The Dalrock requires cost greater than 18. 1 person will die, and the Dalrock will go back. And on with the attempt. Guess he's coming to dinner. Diplomacy or integrity greater than 6. Rachel Garrett has diplomacy, but stopping her will require a personnel to bounce. Tim Waters has diplomacy while facing a dilemma. So that's 1 under, 1 dilemma left. It is tool of the game, which is not going to do anything. With 6 people left unstopped, there is a high likelihood that the mission can be solved. So Rachel Garrett has astrometrics. Jadzia Dax has science. It looks like that there is no physics. One of those cadets has physics, but that only counts while facing the dilemma. Doesn't really matter what's in hand. There is no physics there. That mission will not be solved, and the hands should be discarded. But it seems like we've forgotten about that. Okay, so Dreamer is just sitting there on the mission. Now 6 personnel. The Jem'Hadar warship can fly home, fetch Hippocrates Noah, and fly back. Not sure why Teplin Prime, that mission is solved. Whoops. Some confusion here. But 7 personnel on that ship. Well, that's interesting. 1 personnel staying behind. And now it's Stacker on straight. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay. So 6 people in the crew. 6 personnel attempting Stacker on straight. The Dominion player will draw 6 dilemmas. Now, having seen Hippocrates Noah, who is not actually in the attempt, but the cadet player doesn't really know that, so nothing to lose may seem like a dead draw. Slightly overbooked is good. There are a few cost 2 personnel there. Considering what else to play here. Slightly overbooked. And no random selection necessary there. It's just plain everybody who's cost 2 gets stopped. Stopping 3 personnel. 3 continue. It will not matter what happens with the last dilemma. Randomly select 3. All 3 are facing the dilemma. If the highest cunning amongst those personnel is even, it doesn't matter because those 3 are not going to solve the mission. Just confirming that there are 2 under. And now the cadet player's turn. So still that dreamer sitting on the mission. Well, the cadet player should have discarded his hand, but at the same time, if that dreamer doesn't go under the mission, then it's harder for the cadet player to solve the mission, so we'll call that one a tie. So moving home with the centaur, 9 personnel come back. Now, we could try and split this into 2 teams, a crew of 5 and a crew of 4, but the chances of a crew of 4 having cunning greater than 30 are very unlikely. I think the Dominion player would read that as a bluff, so it probably makes sense to just attempt with everybody. So drawing 8, 1 under, 8 dilemmas there. Removing space dilemmas, it's a planet mission. That timescape that is there is also irrelevant. There won't be more personnel left over to attempt a second time. An issue of trust. And intimidation. Those are 2 big stoppers normally, although there isn't a lot of honor and treachery in that crew. But intimidation, there are a fair number of humans in there, so with the right random selection, human, trill. Okay, so that is 4 personnel stopped. It really doesn't matter what happens with the tool of the game, particularly since 3 of those personnel are cadets who have no skills when it comes time to solving the mission. But just processing that, so Hippocrates Noah has treachery, and one of those cadets has honor, so it looks like she continued and Hippocrates Noah was stopped. 4 personnel left unstopped, 3 of them are cadets. There is no solve there, and still only 3 underneath that mission. The Dominion player has a good chance here. So drawing 1, drawing 2, and opting to leave 1 counter over for the next turn. Cannot fly home because it's a total of 10 span there and back. So opting to go with the 6 that are at the mission. Polywater intoxication will cost at a minimum 1. There are only 4 counters to spend here. Cannot play intimidation, because that would cost 5. Hard time is the only option here that can be played that will only stop 1. and depending on who gets selected, this may be the game. Just confirming there, cannot play the planet dilemma, cannot play hard time, intimidation, cannot play the polywater and the hard time, so this is all that is. So now revealing the hard time, the Dominion player has some decisions to make with Erectorol. One personnel can be excluded from the random selection, and there is one person there who is very important. Ikarika has strength 9, which is what is needed to make it possible to solve with only 5 personnel. So playing 2 Shrouded in Lights. Excluding 3 Jem'Hadar. And shuffling. It looks like Odo is selected, which would ordinarily be bad, but if the solve does happen here, the Dominion player won't care. So we have strength 9, 3 strength 8, 24 and 9 is 33, and 7 is 40. We need 41, but Ikarika can use his ability to sacrifice himself to boost his attributes by +2. He will die at the end of the turn, but it doesn't matter if the mission is solved. Just confirming using the ability there. Erectorol has astrometrics, Tyrannican has navigation. There needs to be 2 officers there. Erectorol officer 1, Ikarika officer 2. That is it. The Dominion player scores mission 2, 35 points, and the game. GG. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope this gives you a better taste of Bridge Crew format. I am quite pleased that the game length is under 30 minutes here. I'll just discuss briefly just some changes to the rules between this and the last game that I published. So I changed the rule around starting personnel. It seems a bit ridiculous to allow 13 personnel to enter the game from the start, which is what the cadet deck could do. So I opted to change the rule to you can only start with 7, a maximum of 7 personnel with the same counter limit. You take your lowest points mission divided by 3, so both players here had 30-point missions. They divide those 30 points by 3 to determine the number of counters they can spend on their starting bridge crew. So it will be 10 counters, maximum 7 personnel. The other rule that I changed that is quite significant is reducing the number of copies of each dilemma allowed in a dilemma pile. There are only 2 missions, so it makes sense we only allow 2 copies of each dilemma. You can't face this dilemma more than once at the given mission, or if you do, then you know that you won't be able to face it at the next mission, which seems like a fair rule, especially when we're trying to keep the game length down. We don't really want to face 3 times Nothing to Lose or 3 times Too Late the Game in a 2-mission game. Wonderful. Thank you very much for watching. I'm pleased to have had you, and I will be posting more Bridge Crew format games and rules updates soon. Bye for now.